Welcome back, everybody, to Buzz Breakdown. Today, we're diving deep into a topic you're super interested in, global conflict.
Ooh, this is a big one.
It is, and you know we love those around here. So you send us the 2024 Global Peace Index. I gotta say, just glancing at the headline kind of makes you want to just, give up.
Why? What's so bad?
Well, it pretty much says the world's more on fire right now than any time since World War II.
Oh, wow.
Seriously,
Yeah.
how is that even possible in the 21st century?
It is pretty wild when you think about it. You know, the sheer scale of it is what gets me. We're talking 56 active conflicts raging around the globe.
56.
56. And get this, 92 countries are involved in some kind of cross-border fight. 92. I mean, to put it into perspective, the last time we saw this level of global conflict entanglement was World War II.
That's crazy. It's like we're always hearing about how interconnected the world is, globalization and all that. But then you see stuff like this and it just makes you wonder.
Yeah, progress feels like a pretty empty word when you look at these numbers.
Exactly. And then you start thinking about the human cost. What are we talking about here? How many lives are actually lost in these conflicts?
So the report says that last year alone, there were 162,000 conflict-related deaths.
Oh my God.
That puts it right up there with some of the worst humanitarian disasters in recent history.
That's hard to even fathom a number like that. 162,000 people. It's just devastating. And I'm guessing all this conflict has to have a huge impact on the global economy too, right? I mean, war is expensive.
Oh, absolutely. The report actually estimates that violence cost the world a mind-blowing $19.1 trillion in 2023.
No way. Trillions.
Trillions. To put that into some kind of perspective, that's like 13.5% of global GDP, basically, over a tenth of everything produced in the entire world gone just because of violence.
Whoa. Okay, so we've established this is a massive problem. But I'm curious, what's fueling all this? Weren't we supposed to be moving towards a more peaceful world?
Well, it's complicated. But one factor is, kind of ironically, a trend towards militarization. You see, even though we've seen years of declining military budgets globally, 91 countries have actually increased their spending on armies and weapons.
Wait, so things are getting worse, but countries are spending even more on their militaries. It seems counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But I think part of it has to do with the changing nature of warfare itself.
How so?
Well, think about technology, especially drones. They're completely changing the way wars are fought and who can even participate.
That's true. It's not just powerful nations using drones anymore. Smaller groups, even non-state actors, are getting in on the action.
Exactly. So the old rules don't really apply anymore, and I think that's making some countries nervous. They're doubling down on traditional military power, even as the landscape of conflict shifts beneath their feet.
Makes sense. So does that mean our traditional methods of resolving conflict, like diplomacy and peace talks, aren't working as well anymore? Are we even good at ending conflicts anymore?
That's the million-dollar question, and the answer is, honestly, not very encouraging. Historically, back in the 1970s, almost half of all conflicts ended decisively. There was a clear winner, a lasting solution, things like that. That number was about 49%.
Okay, so what's it like now?
Today, less than 9% of conflicts are resolved that way.
Whoa, that is a huge drop. So what happens to all the others? Do they just keep dragging on?
Pretty much. They become these frozen conflicts with no clear victors, no lasting solutions. And all that does is create resentment and instability, making it even harder to find a path to peace.
So we've got a world with more conflicts than ever, and we're not even very good at ending them anymore. That's pretty bleak.
It is. And, when you look at specific regions, it gets even more worrying.
Like where? What are the biggest hotspots right now?
The Middle East and North Africa, unfortunately, consistently rank as the least peaceful areas. You look at a country like Syria, for example, it's a perfect example of how economic collapse can feed directly into armed conflict.
It's a cautionary tale for the whole world, really. And then you have the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which just seems to be stuck in this endless cycle of violence.
Yeah. And that conflict in particular is a stark reminder of how dangerous it is when these conflicts spill over their original borders. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has drawn in actors from across the entire region, making it so much more complex and difficult to resolve.
Right, so it's not just about what's happening in one place, it's about the ripple effects that can spread outwards, potentially dragging in more and more countries and escalating things even further.
Exactly. And that's something we need to be really aware of as we move forward because, as we've seen, what starts as a localized conflict can quickly become a global crisis.
It's like a domino effect almost.
Yeah.
One piece falls, and it could set off a whole chain reaction.
That's a great analogy. What might start as a small, localized conflict can escalate incredibly fast, pulling in other countries and turning into a major international crisis.
And we've seen that happen, right? Are there any examples that come to mind?
Oh, absolutely. Look at Ethiopia, Ukraine, Gaza.
Yeah.
They all started as relatively contained conflicts, and then bam, they exploded onto the global stage.
And now we're all dealing with the consequences.
Exactly. And it's not just the immediate violence, right? We're also talking about disrupted supply chains, massive military spending, economic instability. All of that comes with a huge price tag.
And it all circles back to that $19.1 trillion figure. It's not just some abstract number, is it?
Not at all. It represents the very real cost of conflict. The lost lives, the shattered economies, the impact on people's ability to just, you know, live their lives.
It's sobering to think about how interconnected everything really is. No country is an island, as they say.
Very true. And that's why understanding global conflict is so important. It's not some far-off problem. It affects all of us, whether we realize it or not.
Okay, so big picture time. What does all this mean for the future? Are we headed towards a world consumed by conflict, or is there hope for a more peaceful future?
That's the question, isn't it? I'd say the trends we're seeing are definitely worrying. But it's not all doom and gloom.
Oh, good, because I was starting to get a little depressed.
Well, the future isn't set in stone. We have the power to shape the world we want to live in. But that means understanding how power dynamics are shifting and adapting our approaches to conflict resolution.
You've mentioned this idea of shifting power dynamics before. What exactly does that mean? Isn't it still the same old superpowers calling the shots?
Well, the US, China, and Russia still have the biggest militaries, that's for sure. But the rise of asymmetric warfare has changed the game in a big way.
Asymmetric warfare, you keep saying that. But to be honest, I'm not totally clear on what it means. Can you break it down for me?
Sure. Think of it this way. Smaller countries, or even groups that aren't even nations, they can now exert a lot of influence without having huge armies or tons of weapons
How is that possible?
by using innovative tactics, cyber warfare, unconventional strategies, basically anything that gives them an edge against a more powerful opponent.
So it's like a modern-day David and Goliath kind of thing.
Exactly. It's not just about brute force anymore. It's about adaptability, strategy, leveraging technology in new ways. And that makes the future a lot more unpredictable.
That's kind of exciting, actually, but also a little scary. So if traditional military might isn't the be-all and end-all anymore, how do we even approach conflict resolution in this new world?
Well, first of all, we need to ditch the idea that peace is just the absence of war. It's not that simple. Peace is an active process that requires constant effort and collaboration.
Let's say we can't just sit around and hope for the best.
Nope. We have to actively create the conditions for peace to thrive. And that starts with international cooperation.
You mean like diplomacy and peacekeeping efforts?
Exactly. But here's the thing. Those efforts receive a tiny fraction of what we spend on the military. Something like 0.6% of global military budgets.
Wait, seriously? We're spending trillions on preparing for war, but barely anything on preventing it.
It's pretty crazy when you think about it. We need to reevaluate our priorities and invest more in diplomacy, conflict resolution, and building peace from the ground up.
That makes sense. So are there any organizations out there actually doing this kind of work?
Absolutely. There are tons of organizations, big and small, working tirelessly to promote peace all over the world. And you know what? Anyone can support them.
Really? How?
It can be as simple as making a donation, volunteering your time, or just spreading awareness about their work.
So it's not just about governments and world leaders. Everyday people can make a difference too.
100%. And don't underestimate the power of grassroots movements. Local initiatives and community-based conflict resolution can have a huge impact.
I like that. It makes it feel less overwhelming, like we can all do something, even if it seems small.
It's empowering, right? Knowing that we don't have to just sit back and watch the world burn. We can actually do something about it.
Exactly. And it all starts with awareness, right? When we understand the complexities of global conflict, we can start to make more informed decisions, like how we vote, what organizations we support, even just how we talk about these issues with our friends and family.
All of that. And, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problem. But even small actions can have a ripple effect.
I love that, the ripple effect.
Mm.
So choosing peace in our own lives, speaking out against injustice, supporting organizations working for peace, all adds up.
It really does. Think about it. Every act of kindness, every voice raised against violence, every dollar donated to a peace-building initiative, it all contributes to a more peaceful future.
It's like planting seeds of peace, one by one.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Well, I'm a poet, and I didn't even know it. But seriously, this has been a pretty intense deep dive, but also really insightful. We started with that alarming headline about more conflict now than since World War II, and we've really dug into what that means.
The human cost, the economic impact, the changing nature of warfare, it's a lot.
It is. But you've also emphasized that it's not a hopeless situation. We have the power to shape a different future.
We absolutely do. And one of the things that's really stuck with me from the Global Peace Index is that idea that even seemingly minor conflicts can escalate into global crises.
Yeah, the domino effect we talked about earlier.
Right. So, to wrap up this buzz breakdown, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question.
Ooh, I love a good thought-provoking question.
Okay, so we've discussed how smaller conflicts can quickly spiral out of control. What are those under-the-radar conflicts happening right now that we should be paying attention to? What could potentially become tomorrow's global crisis?
That's a really good question, and one I think we all need to consider. It's a reminder that staying informed and engaged is so crucial.
It is. Because the world is constantly changing and new challenges are emerging all the time.
And sometimes the things that seem small today can have huge consequences down the line. So to everyone listening, we urge you to keep digging into this topic, learn more about organizations working for peace, and find ways to get involved.
Even small actions can make a big difference.
Exactly. Because ultimately, peace isn't something that just happens. It's something we have to actively build together. Thank you for joining us for this Buzz Breakdown deep dive into global conflict. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and choose peace.